welcome here to the home of the smiling champion and of course Ferrari's biggest fan as the race for the 2026 FI Formula 1 World Championship is really heating up. And of course, you know, today we will go to one of the classic tracks and the final track that will really take place, you know, in the Far East, which is the Suzuka International Circuit, which of course hosts the round 3 of the championship over here, and it will be a wonderful ride in the SF1000 TN18 Formula 1 Racing Simulator. We will of course also enjoy the wonderful cherry blossoms that are happening in the spring late in Japan. And first we will take a look at the setup, which is all important over here to make sure that we can really plan especially the assist at the super speed. And after that we will also show you some of you know, the correct lines, you know, to go through as we are chasing the history, as we chasing to match the 6 pole positions of Michael Schumacher, of course, achieved here at this legendary Suzuka Circuit. You can see the 5 shiny Formula 1 Grand Prix winner trophies over here. You know, I will be chasing my 5th, you know, victory, which would put me equal, for example, with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and it really should have been 5 victories because in 2023, of course, I retired due to the mechanical problems, but I've always been on pole position over here. And of course, you know, also having 3 fastest laps doesn't hurt. So, you know, after that going over the setup and the warm-up lap, we will then of course jump right into the cockpit over here for the hot lap, and we will again, you know, be aiming to do it within 2 seconds before we then do the red hot lap in the beautiful Scuderia Red Retina iMac that you can see behind me. It's all in the Scarlet red Ferrari faction for the 2026 season. And of course, you know, once we will be describing, again, we are using the F125 cars because the F126 hasn't been released yet, so we cannot tell you, you know, the exact deployment for this season, but we will try our very best because now we know much more after the first Grand Prix and the first sprint Grand Prix weekend of the season, right? Of course. So everybody, I hope you will really enjoy it. Of course, as Scuderia Ferrari, you know, we won 7 times, you know, over here. Of course, you know, we've also gotten, you know, the 7 pole positions, you know, and, you know, I believe 11 fastest laps with, of course, 25 podiums. So podiums almost guaranteed, as I explained in the race introduction. So now let's race the circuit so that you know exactly how to become a champion, right? Of course. So over here, let me climb into the cockpit over here. Okay, and we will take this beautiful Scarlet red Ferrari for a spin, of course, to Suzuka, right? So with the Suzuka, you can see Lewis Hamilton, our driver, having that impressive record of 1 minute 30.983. We will, of course, you know, try to challenge it over here, you know, with our magnificent, you know, hot lap, right? So, you know, what is the key to Suzuka over here? I would say, you know, the key is, you know, really knowing, you know, especially, you know, how to handle the corners, also where to deploy that electrical energy, of course, that's very important, you know, and especially, you know, how to, you know, approach the turns, because sometimes, you know, you have several racing lines, right? And, you know, that can prove to be really tricky in some parts. So first, let's take a look at our setup over here. So with the setup that, of course, will then allow you to carry amazing speed over here, as you can see, you know, just how well we raced over here. So the setup is absolutely important. So here for the Japanese Grand Prix, of course, we will be running with a standard 10 kilograms here of fuel, but then for the aerodynamics, so we will actually go for the front wing aero of 33, but from, you know, the original setup, we go to the rear wing aero of 29. Again, you know, we sacrifice a little bit of the top speed, you know, for the stability in the corners. For the transmission, so differential adjustment on throttle is 100%, differential adjustment of throttle at 35% to give us, you know, the nice turning ability of this beautiful Scarlet red Ferrari race car through the corners. For the suspension geometry, front camber at minus 3.50 degrees, rear camber minus 2.00 degrees, basically all the way to the minimum to maximize the speed. Frontal out 0.00 degrees, rear toe in at 0.10 degrees. Now for the suspension over here, so you can see the front suspension, we started at 6 bar. We will go actually all the way to 41 over here, and so very firm, and you would then think very soft, but actually we will go for rear suspension of 15 over here. That will you know, help us, and then front anti-roll bar, you know, all the way to 21, and keep the rear anti-roll bar at 6. front ride height 22, and we can push the rear ride height to 44. So we pretty much redid the suspension over here as we are chasing obviously the record-breaking achievements over here as we competing for our 5th Formula 1 championship. And sometimes changing the setup can mean the difference between winning and losing. Front brake bias at 56%, so we don't really look up the wheels at 100% brake pressure. And now the tires, so we have to adjust for obviously the slight increase in the rear wing. So front right tire pressure at 29.5 psi, same like the front left tire pressure, that is also at 29.5 psi. But then we will increase the right rear tire pressure to 21.0 psi and the rear left tire pressure to 21.0 psi, so that we will still have that optimal speed. So yeah, this setup I found is then the quickest over here. But of course the original setup, which you kind of seen for a while, also actually works pretty well. So are you guys ready? So let's go over here and head down to the circuit. So we will take it over here, and of course here you have to brake very, very hard as the Ferris wheel approaches, and you're gonna hit it probably at the second gear, the third gear. If you can, coming out of the chicane again, be very, very careful with the track limits, because it's very easy to cut it. If you want to go to the pits, just full throttle over here, and turn sharply. And here, gotta be a little bit careful at the third gear. But nowadays, you can take it at the full throttle. Here, of course, we will have the SM, the straight mode in 2026 as we start the proper lap. There, you can see that's where we would, of course, be getting our trophy. Obviously, this track also owned by Honda, so yeah, they definitely want to do well here. But so far, that will be very challenging. You can see some of the new parts over here. Great viewing spots of the whole circuit, and here you pretty much following down the straight, and you going to one of the key deciders, the championships between Prost and Senna were often decided over here, because Suzuka often hosted the last round of the championship, kind of like Brazil, right? If you know the history of the F1, so you will be approaching, the first, turn pretty much full throttle, and you still gonna be turning over here, and kind of in the middle of the corner, 7th, 6th, 5th gear, if you can. 4th gear, if you feel like you're running out, and yeah, then you can take a little bit of the curve, but again it can spin you out, so you can stay out. A bit of a battery help. 6th, 7th gear, you're going to the S's, so you can see beautiful cherry blossom. 6th, 5th gear, basically you playing with the gears, you playing with the throttle, and the line is absolutely critical, right? You don't want to really touch the curves, but you want to come as close as possible. And here for the final S, it's pretty much like you really jump on the brakes, unlike with the previous S's, but just for a split second as the Ferris wheel opens, you will open up the throttle pretty much, and keep the throttle planted as you go 5th or 6th gear. You really gotta see, there's not much of a difference. Obviously high gears, 5th gear could give you a bit of a hundredths of a second. So then 6th, 7th gear, we are going to go to the two 90-degree corners, the so-called dead air corners, which are a lot of fun to drive. But nowadays, you will be approaching it at full throttle, and pretty much, downshift as you turn, or go to the 6th gear. Just make sure you don't run out wide. The curves are super high, and if you can get it just like this, 4th gear, and stay out of the curves, so they don't spin you around, because of course you're not pointing the wheel straight, you cannot, right? That gives you the best approach here to the hairpin, which usually the Japanese drivers are absolutely mega and can overtake over here, and basically you downshift very, very quickly. And I found the inner line, or the other line, they both work fine, but the inner line really allows you to rotate very quickly. The car is slippery as it wanna go up, obviously, the hill, so you gotta just be a little bit careful with that third gear. But again, always engage all of the electrical power over here, so that you can really reach the top speeds very quickly. And here, nice Japanese countryside opens up for you as we heading down to the spoon corner. And especially with the F125 cars, I mean, you approach it 6th, 7th, 8th gear, and it's actually very important to brake early for the 6th gear, turn in early, right? So that's what a lot of the drivers don't do, and then just keep the foot planted, and then as you're approaching the second spoon, downshift to the 4th gear and on the throttle as quickly as you dare, because then you pretty much won't let go of the throttle until the chicane once again. And that's how you can plant it on pole position, like Michael Schumacher has planted it 6 times. I have planted it 5 times, and I'm sure I'm gonna be aiming for pole as I'm absolutely mega over here. And barring any mechanical problems or any incidents, you know, we should definitely be aiming over here for a race victory, as we of course aim, you know, to really, you know, stamp our authority on the championship. So that was the warm-up lap. Okay, a traditional circuit figure of 8, the only figure of 8 track on the circuit. Are you ready for the hot lap? Of course you are, so let's go for it, guys. Okay, so over here. So let's see what Jan the Smiley Sun champion can do. Yes. And let's go for it. Come on, Jan, come on. Let's go for it. This is Suzuka. Nice and famous assist. Play with the throttle. Play with the throttle and go for it, Jan. Come on. Come on, Jan, come on. Oh, that Dagner was far from ideal. Come on, Jan, come on. Come on, Jan, we can do this. But we stay just within the limits. Let's go, Jan, Smiley Sun champion. 130 are coming up. And nice one, come on, Jan, Smiley Sun champion. And we did it over here, so yeah. Okay, alright. So let me stop over here. So hope you, you know, enjoy over here. This hot lap, my God, we almost flew off the deck there as we obviously turned in a little bit too quickly. But yeah, it was, you know, a little bit over, you can see, you know, the 2 seconds over there. But yeah, without the deck there, that would be, you know, definitely half a second over there. So definitely do check out the red hot lap as we absolutely flew through Suzuka. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Of course, of course. So you can see it's absolutely important, you know, when you, you know, are able to plant it, again, you can, you know, have a absolutely magnificent, you know, absolutely magnificent time. So, yeah, you can see again a wonderful scenery over here, and, you know, it's going to be lots of fun over here, you know, racing around Suzuka. And it was my pleasure to introduce it to all of you guys over here with this stunking hot lap. Again, you know, you could see, you know, I was really doing great job, you know, there with the assist. But, you know, as always, you know, it's really difficult, especially, you know, with the hot lap when you don't have the tires prepared, right? You know, because you can see, you know, if you feel like you're running a little bit wide, always, you know, downshift, right? Even though there's no engine braking, you know, that can definitely help you to stabilize the car. And, you know, yeah, sometimes, you know, when you ride, you know, the curbs, you can see, like, especially at the deck net, they can really unsettle you over there. So, you know, it's critical to get the right line, and then, you know, that's how you plant it on pole position, which we've always done. Yes, so absolutely amazing. Only Hungarian, yes, Marina, you know, has this amazing record. So let's keep it going this weekend for the final Grand Prix in March, and we cannot wait to see Scuderia Ferrari on pole position, of course, with Michael Schumacher, you know, there as well. Everybody, we love Formula 1, we love racing, we love Ferrari. Forza Ferrari!